We're joined by Accountability Now Director, Advocate Paul Hoffman. Advocate Hoffman, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Really strong words coming out of this anti-corruption dialogue. But I think most importantly, it can be so easy to forget that while we talk about state capture as a concept and, you know, the revelations around wide and whole-scale corruption no longer take South Africans by surprise. This was not always the case, and there are people who today are still paying a very heavy price for having taken a stand when it wasn't convenient or comfortable to do so.
Yes, no doubt about it. I think that the whistleblowers of South Africa are a highly endangered species, and the topic was not given adequate attention during the presidential address. In fact, the president didn't tell us anything new at all, and worse than that, he didn't tell us anything about what his government is going to do about implementing the binding decision of the Constitutional Court that laid down the criteria that must be put in place if we are going to have effective and efficient anti-corruption machinery of state. We've spoken about this before. The Constitutional Court said that we must have specialized, properly trained, independent, adequately resourced, and secure corruption busters on our payroll of the state, and that was simply not dealt with at all. The president did praise the impartiality and the independence of our judiciary, and he didn't give any inkling of what his government is going to implement a binding decision that was made a very long time ago. And that, I think, is sad news.
A part of why that's important, really, having the political statements and speaking to the political will, is because the reason why we've ended up in this, you know, corruption cycle, the vicious cycle of corruption that we have today, is because that wasn't given adequate attention. And Chief Justice Zondo, towards the end of his remarks, going back to highlight the role that an organization like the Scorpions played in helping to fight corruption, really again is re-emphasizing the point that, yes, there are institutions we have today, but those will simply not be able to do what a body like the Scorpions was able to.
Yes, I'm afraid that all the good people have been chased out of the National Prosecuting Authority, which the president called the National Prosecuting Agency more times than I care to count, really showing his lack of engagement with what needs to be done about the parlous conditions in which our anti-corruption machinery finds itself. We've got to get to grips with the notion that unless there is proper deterrence, there is no incentive for corrupt people to stop being corrupt. You can talk about your whole of society solutions and getting the churches and the people and civil society to be anti-corruption, but you're not going to stop the corrupt people, of whom there are too many in this country, from acting corruptly if they do not face the deterrent effect of efficient investigation and prosecution leading to convictions and appropriate punishment in every case. That is really what we should be talking about. It wasn't even mentioned, nor did he mention that the DA has come up with a proposed anti-corruption commission in Chapter 9, nor did he mention that his own ANC the National Executive Committee, as long ago as August 2020, passed a resolution calling upon his cabinet to urgently put in place a permanent, standalone, independent body which would be given a mandate to fight corruption and organized crime. That resolution by his own party doesn't get mentioned again by anybody in his cabinet, and has certainly not been acted on by his cabinet. Instead, we have this National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, which seems to be tasked with kicking the can down the road until after the next election, all the while giving the impression that they are working seriously on how to formulate a response when a binding decision has been made as to what the response should be to rampant corruption destroying our country.
We can't have a conversation like this, Advocate Hoffman, without looking at the role of the prosecuting authority. Because really, when it comes to what should happen to those who are accused, as you're saying, where there's lack of action taken against these individuals, it's at the door of the prosecuting authority. And as things stand, we've had such poor prosecutions, including around what came out of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, that unfortunately it hasn't instilled much confidence. Chief Justice Zondo talking about the role of Vusi Pikoli and saying that, you know, he contributed incredibly to fighting corruption, and he hopes that he'll have some kind of role to contribute, you know, in that regard for the country going forward. But surely there has to be a lot more reflections on what is not going right at the NPA, especially because we're now at a period where we're looking at almost 5 years that we've had Shamila Batoy in position. And, you know, there were so many commitments and promises made in the beginning, and unfortunately, it has simply not met expectation.
Yes, I think that your summary is accurate. The President did, in the course of his address today, concede that the National Prosecuting Authority was hollowed out during the process of state capture. Shamila Batoy has let it be known that she regards her institution as infested with saboteurs who were planted there to see to it that those involved in state capture never face the might of the law. The dockets disappear, investigations get referred back to the Hawks, and the Hawks really do not have the capacity. I think it's now common cause that the Hawks do not have the capacity to investigate corruption in high places properly. So what happens is that in the absence of a proper investigation, the prosecution service, hollowed out and infested with saboteurs, simply doesn't get off first base when it comes to dealing with the high-flying corrupt operators who seem to regard South Africa as one of their favorite playgrounds. And as the Chief Justice said, the corruption is ongoing to this day. He was dealing with a mandate to deal with the state capture around the Guptas and those involved with the Zuma administration. But the Zuma administration cannot be blamed for COVID-premierism, which occurred after Zuma was no longer in power and after the epidemic struck the world.
Yeah, certainly concerning the extent to which corruption has really become endemic in our society. Only makes it that much harder to root out. Advocate Paul Hoffman is the Director for Accountability Now.